be watching me from. My name is Shem for Shem Speaks. I'm a psychologist and I've been taking you through part one of the depression series. As I said in the last episode in this podcast, this series is quite broad, this series is quite lengthy. We may not necessarily be able to cover each of the pertinent issues in depth within a particular episode. But because of how deep it is and how expansive it is, we will be doing it in a series of sub-episodes and sub-topics so that we are able to see what are some of these things that we face through on a day-to-day basis. How can we dive deep into them? How can we unmask them? How can we understand them? So we will have a series of episodes after this, and my hope is that it helps us to identify some of these issues as matters depression, some of these challenges that are presented within depression itself, and how can we be able to identify, overcome, manage, and cope with some of the circumstances that may provoke or may ignite a sense of depression or may provoke anxiety that may lead to depression. So just a quick recap from part one. Part one, we handled the introduction, we handled the causes, we handled the signs. So if you are not able to tune in to part one, I'll be able to send a link just after this video. So that now you are at least able to catch up on what we are able to look through in part one. So depression in summary is simply a sense or a feeling of helplessness, hopelessness, and worthlessness. We are able to look at that in depth in part one. However, where need be, or in case any of us who are watching, or any of you who is watching me from wherever you are, wants us to dive deeper into the definitions of depression, into the various elements and the various factors that are within depression, please feel free to write in the comment section, and then we'll be able to look at it from that point. Yeah, so today we are going to look at managing and overcoming depression. We were to look at this previously, but because of technical issues, we were not able to complete that entire series or that entire part of the series. So today we are going to cover that in part two, managing depression. So when it comes to managing depression, there are several things that someone needs to consider. I wasn't able to look into many of them. I've highlighted 5 of them, which will help us to try and see out of these 5. Possibly there's a 6th or a 7th or an 8th or even up to a 12th. But out of these 5, which ones do you find relatable? Which ones are currently present within your current challenge that you're facing, or the current circumstance that you're going through? Which one points to something that you can identify? So that now, once it points to that, we will be able to see how that can be managed, how that can be overcome, how that can be coped, depending on what stage you are in as far as undertaking a particular goal or undertaking a particular task is concerned. So in managing depression, there are 5 key things that I had penned down, and we're going to look at them one step at a time. The first thing is testing perceptions with positive action. And you need to ask yourself this question: what am I good at? Or what can I do with utmost ease? So you need to test your perceptions with positive action. Perceptions here can be certain thoughts or certain ideas that you had, a particular goal or a particular objective or a particular task, and based on these perceptions, you feel inadequate within yourself to try and pursue them. But then here you need to ask yourself this question: how can you approach that goal? How can you approach that task based purely on the available abilities, the available resources, the available expertise that you may be having with response to that task? How can you approach that goal in comparison to or in relation to the abilities that other people may have to be able to give you the necessary motivation to pursue that goal? So while the perception about the goal may be too big or too vast, when you looked at helplessness in the last time, it was mainly zeroing in on what are the capacities, what are the competencies, what are the skills, what are the abilities. So now when you want to test that perception, you simply look at what are your abilities, what are your competencies, what are your skills, what are the skills and competencies of others. Sometimes, initially, when we want to begin working on a goal, when we want to begin working on a task that seems overwhelming, it always is, or it always seems overwhelming at that particular point in time. There is always that perception that this thing is too big at that time. However, you need to ask yourself, how have you faced similar tasks before? How have you faced similar goals before? Which other people were available to you to assist you in that particular goal? Possibly you are asking yourself, the people who are there before are no longer there right now. Possibly you have changed the environment. Possibly you are in a new work environment. And so the people who used to be available to you are now less and less available. So you need to ask yourself this question: who within your environment can you reach out to who may be able to assist you in pursuing that goal? This person or these people will add their skills, will add their abilities, will add their competencies upon yours. And once they are able to do that, then they will help you to attain the goal that you are pursuing. That, my friend, will help you to minimize the tendency of anxiety. And once anxiety is minimized, then the possibility of entering into a state or a phase of depression also gets minimized. And that's something to actually think about and celebrate about. So ask yourself, what are the skills that you have? What are the abilities that you have? Things that are easily within your disposal. And how can you utilize them to pursue that goal? To test that perception that that goal was unattainable, and to actually make step-by-step actions, positive actions towards it, so that you advance towards it in attaining it. And the interesting thing about that is this: the more you pursue attaining a task or a goal that seems impossible or that seems too far-fetched, the more you gain confidence, the more you gain stamina, the more you gain the resilience that you need to pursue that goal to its completion. That is something to think about. So test your perceptions with positive action. The next thing that you need to ask yourself is, what known weaknesses do I have that are unaddressed or unattended to? And this relates to the second point. The second point is basically understanding visible weaknesses objectively. So, what weaknesses or what known weaknesses do you have that are unaddressed or they need to be attended to? And sometimes you may look at your goal in relation to your weaknesses. And perhaps those weaknesses may be hindrances to you or may be drawbacks to you from attaining the goal that you want to attain with the speed that you require. So it calls for a self-evaluation and a self-check upon you. What are some of these weaknesses? What are some of these setbacks? A weakness is something that keeps emerging as a drawback whenever you are pursuing a particular goal. And it's important to identify that. What is that particular trait that keeps emerging, that keeps re-emerging? Is it something that can be fixed? Is it something that can be addressed? Is it something that requires another person or another expert or another professional to help you in managing it, so that once it is reduced in the course of time, it helps you to improve your ability, it helps you to improve on your strengths, it helps you to improve on your competencies to pursue that goal until you attain it. So understanding visible weaknesses helps in that regard. Remember, a weakness is that thing that keeps re-emerging or keeps recurring whenever you are pursuing a goal or whenever you are pursuing a similar goal to one that you had pursued before. That is something definitely not to ignore. Some weaknesses can be blind spots to you. And because they are blind spots, other people may easily notice them. However, that it is a blind spot, it does not mean that it should continue to persist to prevent you from pursuing the goal. So ask for help where it is needed. In case any of you have been able to identify a weakness or something that you feel this is something that is re-emerging, please feel free to write down on the comment section and let's interact more. Let's get to know about this thing more. So you need to understand what are some of the negative habits that are emerging, some of the negative trends of behavior that are emerging. And this involves objectively identifying trends of behavior and measuring against the expected goal. So if the expected goal is measured against those patterns of behavior or those trends in habits, and trends in negative habits can emerge as a weakness, then it means that that weakness needs to be managed, needs to be addressed, it needs to be unpacked. Perhaps that weakness is a sign of a past frustration or a past drawback that you faced. And because it was something that happened in the past, probably it is because of unaddressed thoughts, unfiltered thoughts, repressed emotions like we looked at before. What is the cause, or what are some of the causes of these repressed emotions and these repressed thoughts? Remember, thoughts form into words. Words influence action. Action influences habits, and habits feed into behavior, which feeds into character. Character builds into lifestyle. So it's very, very important to consider what are some of these thoughts, these repressed ideas, these repressed emotions that led you to have a negative pattern of behavior. And as that negative pattern of behavior continued, it became a visible weakness. And it hindered you from attaining or pursuing that goal. That is something to think about. In case there are any thoughts or any repressed emotions that you may be going through, do not hesitate to reach out. Reach out to that close friend whom you feel this is a person you can closely confide in, who can help you to realize the depth of these repressed thoughts, the depth of these repressed emotions, and how they can enable you to chart a path in as far as overcoming and managing it. And as you do that, it helps you to advance towards the goal. It helps you to live a less anxious life. It helps you to manage and to overcome the depression. The third thing is seeking the appropriate help or assistance. And we talked about this in the first and second bullet. You need to ask yourself this question: who or what can help to attain that goal? As I say this, think about your circle of friends. I had an interesting video where a person said they did not want to have a circle of friends. They wanted to have friends or people in a straight line so that they are able to see who is coming and who is going. That's a very interesting perspective, which we'll look at another point. But think about the people who you interact with on a day-to-day basis, or you have interacted with before, and ask yourself, based on this goal, which after you have evaluated your weaknesses, after you have tested your perceptions, you have realized you actually need more people who may be skilled or equipped in other means. And through these other means, they will help you to attain that goal. They will lessen the burden off your shoulders. And as they do that, the goal becomes attainable, the goal becomes easy to pursue, because there are many people who are pursuing it together with you. It is important to think about what are some of these people who come to assist you. And one of the things that you need to ask yourself is this: within this goal, what are some of the factors or some of the ingredients that are necessary in pursuing it? As you do that, you need to create a checklist. What are some of the strengths that you give to it? What are some of the strengths that you do not have, but other people have to help you attain it? After you have identified the strengths that other people have that you don't have, then ask yourself, out of the people that you know, which of those people fit the criteria that you need to pursue that goal? And once you get to that level, then begin listing those people down. Begin contacting them. Begin reaching out to them. Begin asking for help. Begin asking for their assistance. Because you never know. 2 or 3 people can actually help you to get further and further with your goal than if you are doing it by yourself. If you're doing it by yourself, there are high chances of you being anxious because you feel inadequate, possibly because a particular strength that you're looking for is not available to you. And that raises the level of anxiety. Once the level of anxiety is raised, then there's a high likelihood that you are predisposed to depression. So, rather than wait for anxiety to kick in and to escalate, consider asking for help. Consider looking for someone or looking for people who will supply their strength to your weakness, or who will supply their strength to the inadequacies that are present in order for you to achieve that goal. There's this quote that I've heard a number of times which says, teamwork makes the dream work. Another quote that is similar to that says, if one chases 1,000, then 2 can put 10,000 to flight. It does not say 2 will put 2,000. It says 2 will put 10,000 to flight. What does that mean? These 2, when they combine their efforts together, when they combine their strengths together, they complement each other in their weaknesses. And as they do that, they make the labor of 2 more effective than if one person was doing it by their own. So think about that. Think about which people are currently within your disposal concerning that particular goal that you want to pursue. What are their strengths? Are their strengths complementing the pursuit of that goal? If their strengths are complementing it, then consider giving them a call. Consider looking for them. Consider messaging them and say, hey, I have this issue, I have this problem. And I was thinking that you are the best person in your position or in your capacity to assist me through it. Can we create time to look at it? Now, not all people may respond immediately. It's important to be ready for that. And as you do that, it then means that perhaps this goal needs to be stretched in the long term. And as it is stretched in the long term, sometimes you may be faced in a situation where you've reached out to 5 or 6 people and you've only gotten 2 or you've only gotten 1. Those 2 or that 1 person is more important than if all of them were not present. Because they will at least help you or assist you offload that goal bit by bit. And once the pursuit of that goal becomes clearer and becomes more amplified, you never know which other assistance you will attract along the way. Sometimes it could be other people who may not necessarily be within the people that you know. And once they see you pursuing that goal that you are currently on track, they will begin now to participate in its actualization. They will begin to participate in its realization. And they will begin to supply their own strength to yours. So think about that. People are very, very crucial in as far as attaining and pursuing a goal. People have different strengths, and their strengths will be very crucial in realizing that goal. Never work alone. If you work alone, and if you continue working alone, there is a high chance that the anxiety that you have started with initially may build up into a state of depression. So it's important to guard against that. The fourth thing is understanding strengths. We looked at testing perceptions with positive action. We looked at understanding your weaknesses objectively. We've also looked at seeking the help or appropriate help or assistance. Now it's time to understand the strengths. Remember, you don't look for people or you don't look for assistance where you yourself have not invested yourself in. So look at the strengths that are presently available. Consider your skills, consider your competencies, consider your abilities, consider your experiences. Also consider your personality against the goal's requirements and their actual contributions towards attaining the goal in the short term and in the long term. What are the skills that you have acquired over time? What is that course that you pursued that helped you to gain certain skills that you never had before? Are those skills within your personality? What are the abilities that you have? What are the abilities that you have gained over time in various roles that you have endeavored to be responsible for? What are the experiences that you have gathered over time that have built in you the knowledge and the expertise to pursue that goal? Are they relevant to that goal? These are some of the questions that you need to ask yourself. So have an understanding of your strengths. Your strengths are where the pursuit of that goal always begin from. And once you begin pursuing it from the level of your strengths, then it becomes easier for the goal to start and gain momentum. And as it gains momentum, remember to include the participation of others, because an evaluation of strengths invites strengths from other people. And there is nothing as wonderful, there is nothing as rewarding, there is nothing as worth pursuing as having strengths being gathered together in the pursuit of a common goal. And once that happens, then anxiety minimizes. The helplessness that you might have thought or the helplessness that you might have perceived you had begins to diminish. Why? Because now you are acknowledging the strengths. Now you are acknowledging your abilities. Now you are acknowledging your skills, your experiences, your competencies, your personality. And as you acknowledge these things, it builds confidence in you. And when it builds confidence, then the sense of hopelessness even minimizes. You begin to have more hope that this thing or this goal can be done. This goal is attainable. So it is important to have an assessment of your strengths. The fifth thing, which is related to the point number 2, is basically unlearning negative habits. The question you need to ask yourself is this: what patterns of behavior are keeping you in one cycle and not attain your goal? There could be patterns of behavior that you may have that are keeping you in a certain cycle, whereas the goal is external. The goal may be something that you want to attain, but because those patterns of behavior are keeping you in a certain cycle, we looked at how depression can keep someone in like a rocking chair or like a boat that is tossed about in the sea with waves. It seems to be moving on one side, it seems to be moving on the other side, but there is no forward movement. But it seems to be moving. So it could be that those negative patterns of behavior are keeping you in a cycle And that cycle is not enabling you or is not helping you from to achieve or to attain that goal. Simply put, it's this. If a cycle creates a shell around you, then that goal will continue to remain unattainable. So the other questions that you need to ask yourself is this. What are some of the negative behaviors that you have had that prevented you from attaining a particular goal? You need to sit down and have a self-assessment or have an objective self-assessment. Did you have similar goals in the past? What were some of the negative habits that you had that prevented you from attaining that goal or striving towards it? How did you approach those negative habits? How can you change your approach in as far as those negative habits are concerned? Remember, we are looking about unlearning negative habits. And one of the ways of unlearning negative habits is doing an assessment. How did those habits in the past keep you from attaining that particular goal that you had? What provoked those habits? How can those causes or those things that provoked those habits be addressed so that they are not transferred from one unattained goal to another new goal that you want to pursue? The second thing, or part B of that, is what are the sources or the causes, motivations, or triggers of those negative behaviors? What are the emotional responses to those triggers? I think we looked at this when we were just concluding the first part, where identifying some of the negative habits. You need to ask yourself, what is the cause? What are the triggers? As you walk down memory lane, and as you're thinking about certain goals that you were trying to attain in the past, what triggered the negative responses that you had while you were pursuing those goals to the point where they seemed unattainable at the time? And as you think about that, what are the causes of some of those negative emotions? What kept you from striving towards attaining that goal that influenced a certain negative habit while you are pursuing it? Sometimes, or most of the time, 80 or 90% of us humans will focus on the negative habit, and we will keep saying, oh, this person is like this person always does things like this person is always angry about the same thing, this person is always hopeless about the same thing. And unfortunately for most of us, that is the weakness, that is the predominant weakness of human beings. However, it calls for a certain level of observation, a certain level of being introspective, a certain level of asking yourself from an investigation point of view. There is this negative habit. What is its cause? What is its trigger? What influenced it to emerge? Once that has been identified, the next step becomes easier. What available resources can you utilize to deal with the cause or with the source of that negative habit? Sometimes that may call for you to suspend your pursuit of the goal for a time, depending on how severe the negative habit is or the negative behavior is. Sometimes it may cause you to be passive in as far as pursuing the goal is concerned, because this time you are looking at a particular trigger to that negative habit, so that once you identify the trigger, once you identify the cause, once you are able to ask yourself what are the available resources that are within your reach to deal with that particular trigger, then it becomes easier to pursue the goal. Because from this point, you will be pursuing it from a level of knowledge, from a level of awareness of the cause of the trigger and how you are able to manage it. And when you are managing the trigger, when you are trying to utilize the skills, when you are trying to utilize the resources, when you are trying to utilize the knowledge that you are receiving from different people about that particular trigger, it builds within you strength that you thought you never had. And as it builds within you that needed strength, you begin to unlearn the negative habit. You begin to come out of the negative habit. Some people say you come out a better person. I would like to put it this way. You not only come out as a better person, you come out as a person who is being refined. Remember, we are not striving for perfection. We are striving for progress. It is better to progress towards a particular goal. It is better to progress towards unlearning a particular negative habit than always wanting to be perfect. Perfection is an ideal. Perfection is an idea. Perfection is a concept that whenever we think about it, it always seems unattainable to us. However, when we think about it in terms of progress, then unlearning a particular negative habit becomes easier. And as you unlearn it, it may take a few days, it may take several weeks, it may take a few months. For some of us, it takes a year. For some of us, it takes several years. However, the value of unlearning that negative habit will begin to bear fruit as you pursue the goal. And the goal will start becoming clearer to you because you are dealing with or you are unlearning a particular negative habit. So how do you do this? Identify the negative behaviors that have prevented you from attaining that goal. Dig deeper to understand what are some of the sources, the causes, the motivation or the triggers to those negative habits. And after you have identified the causes or the triggers, ask yourself, what available resources do you have at your disposal? And how will you be able to utilize those resources in unlearning that negative habit? I would like to pause there for now. And in summary, I'll simply say this. Depression is usually the perceived incapability of reaching towards attaining a goal. Identify the goal. Do an analysis of strengths and weaknesses and determine what actions you will need to take in order to advance towards the goal. In doing so, you gain the needed positive stamina that will facilitate you to emerge from the depressive state and build a positive outlook that is purpose-driven. That is the summary of this series. We'll be able to look deeply into the different elements that we've been able to share so far. We started with introductions, we dove into causes, we dove into signs and symptoms. And now today we've looked at managing and overcoming depression. Remember, in managing and overcoming depression, you do 5 things. You test perceptions with positive action. You strive to understand visible weaknesses and understanding them objectively. You seek help or appropriate assistance. You understand your own strengths. And you begin to unlearn negative habits. I hope this has been very helpful towards you. In case there are thoughts or questions that may have emerged or may have erupted in the course of this discussion, please feel free to write in the comment section or reach out to me in my contacts in the description of this video. In case you missed part 1 of this series, be sure to look into it within this podcast. I will share the link also in the description of this video. Once again, my name is Shem Kalafa for Shem Speaks. Be sure to follow me on my social media handles for this content and more like it. Thank you so much. In case you want to be part of this work and you feel that you need to support this work, I have left it details of that within the description as well. So once again, thank you. This is Shem Kalafa for Shem Speaks.